Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Happy Monday, and welcome back to episode 584 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast. Apologies for the 3-minute delayed start. Overall, all things considered, especially some of the shows that I'm on, 3 minutes is not all that bad. Unfortunately, I realized all too late it was because I didn't switch my my profile over to my streaming profile, which is why even though I have Stream Elements multi-streaming set up in my OBS and everything was looking fine there, the signal could not be sent out, and so there was an error message. Glad I was able to fix it, though, without having to create a brand new stream. But we made it. We did it, guys. We survived. Anyway, so thank y'all very much for being here this evening. Let me pause that real quick. Sorry. I've got a little fan in here. It keeps me warm. It's very warm in here with the computers and everything like that. But anyway, tonight, we're going to be talking about some box office stuff because some interesting things happening. First off, Predator Badlands fell off a massive cliff, dropping roughly 68%. I've not checked the official percentage drop. I believe it's still listed as 68% from its opening weekend. Now, if you were to have followed the advice of some very unwise people, including some pretty mainstream names that call themselves and consider themselves to be, box office experts or whatever names and titles they want to give themselves, I myself do not call myself a box office expert. I'm just some dude on the internet who found a obsession with numbers and trying to figure out how things work, especially when it comes to profitability. Figured out a code, figured out an algorithm, as one could say, an equation, as it were, and figured out, hey, guess what? We can actually figure out pretty easily whether films have made money or lost money theatrically at the box office, and have been doing it since 2019. Kind of crazy that it's been going on that long. But if you were to have believed all the so-called experts with the hundreds of thousands of subscribers, maybe even some with millions of subscribers at this point, kind of insane that many people actually listen to their takes in any way, you would have believed that Predator Badlands was a phenomenal movie, that people were loving it, that people were going gaga for it, and that, hey, anyone who's saying the film is a flop or didn't have that great of an opening weekend is, they're just proving themselves to be haters. Well, what you got to say now? Now, also, keep in mind, I was not actually thinking that the film was going to have this kind of a drop-off. But now that it actually has had this kind of a drop-off, it does make it that much sweeter, going back to last week, because the main point that I myself and many others in this space were trying to make when it came to Predator Badlands, and this isn't even about the quality of the movie, right? If you enjoyed the film, that's on you. Please enjoy whatever films that you want to enjoy. Just please don't try to argue that because of your subjective enjoyment, that means objectively it's good. Because there are a lot of flaws when it comes to Predator Badlands. But when it comes to the actual numbers themselves, please spare us the nonsense. Please spare us the shilling, trying to argue that a low opening weekend, though bigger than your initial estimates, still on the low side of things, is somehow supposed to make us impressed. And that we would have to actually wait for the hard data to come in to figure out whether the film was on track to make money or lose money. But based off of just the very little data set that we had, turns out last weekend when we were saying, you know what, this isn't really that impressive of an opening weekend, especially when you think about those international numbers just not coming through for the film. You add on top of that this massive drop-off domestically, and the film continuing to not perform well internationally, and guess what? We got ourselves a flop, guys. It's kind of amazing how all that works. It's almost as if, those of us who've been following this for many years now maybe know what we're talking about. It's not about hating on movies for me, okay? There's a lot of films that I hate that make a crap ton of money at the box office. There's one coming up in just a little over a month now, Avatar. I've already said, I've been saying this now for months. That film is guaranteed to make minimum $1 billion, probably even well more than that. It was the only film I could say, 9, 12 months out, hey, yeah, if you want to know what I think is going to make $1 billion next year, Avatar could easily put on that list, even though I think the film sucks. Even though I think the entire universe that has been built has been terrible. But it doesn't matter, because even though I just despise everything about Pandora and everything that James Cameron has done with that universe, I still cannot deny the fact that people go to see those movies. They don't remember the films. They don't really talk about the films after the fact. I didn't get to watch Drinker's video, but I did see that Drinker actually touched on that subject today. It's a very important topic to talk about. The fact that, again, they make all of this money, and yet they really hold no place in the public conscious. They really hold no place in the pop culture discourse, other than just as a statistic for box office and box office revenue and records. That's pretty much all that it's able to hold in our minds. And I think that says a lot about just how bad those movies actually are, especially from a objective storytelling standpoint. But films that I hate, I still have to admit when they make money. And Pandora is going to make $1 billion this year once again. There's also obviously going to be cases where there's films that I really enjoy that don't make money. I remember the battle of, or rather the fight for Alita Battle Angel. I really wanted that film to succeed, and theatrically, it was still at a loss. It was a big part of pushing for the physical media campaign, trying to get as many copies of that film into as many hands as possible, because I love the film. But I was also still able to say, hey, objectively, this film lost money. Another film also that a lot of us found after the fact was Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, partly because of how terrible the marketing was. But even though we enjoyed that film, and even though many of us enjoyed it even theatrically before people found it on physical media, still had to admit, yeah, that film didn't make money either. So whenever the people are out there, right? And it's not just, Predator fans, right? Because these were people that, again, are mainstream media shills. But if there's any person out there who gets instant access or gets early access to screenings, paid for by studios, gets flown out, gets access, right? We call them access media shills. Anyone who is in that position, you always have to take their views and their opinions with suspect. There's some that are more trustworthy than others. I think of Jeremy Jahns. He's not perfect. He's a human, but that's why many of us like him, right? Because he is human. Because he acts like a human being, right? And because he acts like a human, because he's relatable, because he feels real and not just manufactured, we go to him for his instant thoughts on things. We go to him to hear his opinion. And in many cases, his opinions can influence whether we have any interest in a film or not. But a lot of these mainstream access media shills, people like Grace Randolph and John Campea, amongst many others, they have done nothing to gain our trust. They've done nothing to prove themselves trustworthy, to not be shills. And I think what you saw last weekend was a perfect example of who to trust and who not to trust. Again, it's one thing if someone was saying, hey, I like this film, you might like it too. But if they were trying to run with numbers, trying to prove something about box office success, if any channel was doing that last week, you should now have a pretty good idea. Oh, those are the shills that I need to be on the lookout for. Because, again, it's very easy for them to try to spin their narratives and spin their webs. But because it's not rooted in and founded upon basic principles, not just of fine mathematics, but of, I would say, ethics too, it's very easy for them just to push crap out there trying to convince you of something that is not actually true. And I welcome you if maybe you're the first time watching me in any way, right? You've never heard of me before. I am a very small channel here. I'm a bit of a nobody in this space, and I'm comfortable with that. It's a part of the charm of this audience that I love so much, is that we're all able to stay together and have these really great conversations and not have to worry about too many people, getting involved, right? But if you are new to this space, or if you are new to this channel, or if you got caught up in some of the nonsense of last weekend, of people trying to, again, make the film out to be something that it was not financially. Welcome to the real world. And hopefully you learn a little something along the way. Anyway, that's my little speech out of the way. Let me go ahead and fix something real quick, though, because I did have, again, some technical issues early on. Thank y'all again for y'all's patience. I just need to get the chat fixed, and hopefully I can get that taken care of. Hopefully I can get that taken care of. So that way I can go back in time and get all of the chats that might have been missed. Let's see if I can do that. And again, thank y'all for patiently waiting with me. Okay. I don't know why that happened. Let me now recreate it, I guess I have to do. Apply. Okay. Why did it not save? This is the silliest thing. Why do you do this? Why do you do this? It does not make any sense to me. Oh, I guess I gotta pull up the other one. This is why I pull up the chat. Oh goodness. Anyway, so I use Social Stream, which is part of like the Video Ninja series, and there's a lot of stuff that really works well about it. What I like is that it's able to like archive chat, so I can go back in time. It allows me to see chats before the stream actually gets started. For some reason, it just wouldn't load up. So apologies in advance, but let's get to the people at the very beginning who left some comments. So first off, Guillermo Gage at 604. So before the stream even started, Guillermo Gage over on the Green Machine dropping a $5 Rumble rant. Appreciate you, Guillermo Gage, saying maybe there's a scene in Now You See Me, Now You Don't that has a magician who changes people's clothes from red to black and back to red again. And that's why the Chinese are liking this movie. Again, it must be. I'm sure there's some explanation that is something that I've possibly missed about this particular topic and this particular issue. But it is just intriguing to me that they're making like $20+ million in China in its debut. And that's the largest chunk of any international audience. It's kind of crazy. Snortapoopus, Cuber, hello, humans and other quitters. What's going on, Snortapoopus? Welcome back. Guillermo Gage says, what are the rules on Rumble for the ats? Again, I try to explain in my my response to you that if it's just a regular chat, whether you put @Odin at the very beginning, just Odin, no @ symbol, just Odin on Rumble, because so few people are on there, that's fine enough for now. If at any point Rumble just kind of goes nuts, then, we'll have to take it from there. But for any Rumble rant, don't worry about it. The Rumble rant itself will come through, so there's no reason to tag. It's obviously the exception to the tag rule. Also, if you are a member on YouTube, right, you also, because it shows up differently in the chat, it's easier for me to see. You don't have to worry about that either. And my son is knocking on the door real quick, so just give me a second. We'll see if he heard me. I said, ask mommy. Sounds like he may have gone poop. it's kind of where we are at this point. It sounds like his mom has heard him. All right, the Lady Freya has heard him. It sounds like. All right, sorry about that. Anyway, so Guillermo Gage, getting back to your comment though, yeah, just put Odin at the very beginning, and that's fine. In the regular chats, and then any Rumble rant, super chat, anything like that, don't even worry about it. All right, Wendy Hunter, Wendy at 704, what's going on? Saying hello and happy Monday. Hello to you. Banjo Sandwich, that's right, Gary of the Banjo Sandwich Worthington. What's going on, Banjo Sandwich? Saying the quicker this Wicked Part 2 is done, the better. Well, hey, it'll be good news for the box office. It'll be good news for the theaters. So I would actually say, as annoying as it is because of specifically the whole press campaign, the press tour, yes, totally agree. Cynthia Erivo is just bizarre. Ariana Grande feeds. Ariana Grande is a typical theater girl, right? Is a typical theater nerd where she clearly has this level of empathy that she starts to. She feeds off. This is something that's very common in theater people. They feed off of the energy of others. So if Cynthia Erivo is just objectively bizarre, that's really the only thing I can really explain it to be, right? Is that she's just bizarre. Then it makes complete sense that Ariana Grande will kind of match that energy too, right? So it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense that is what we're seeing on that tour. And that part is absolutely very annoying and creepy in every single way. But I will push back and say I don't want it to be done quickly because I do actually want theaters to survive. And unfortunately, this is the kind of movie and this is the kind of audience that's going to keep theaters chugging along for just a little bit longer. It's the same thing also with Avatar. I would love to see Avatar flop, but at the same time, I know that theaters need films like Avatar to keep their lights on. Unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in today. And again, that's completely on Hollywood. Banjo Sandwich saying, I hear Gary is in Egypt visiting his mummy. I see what you did there. Shout out to Gary. Hopefully he is safe and had safe travels along the way. Got to stay in this chat for a little while. And then once I'm in the regular chat, I'll be able to catch up on some of these other comments. All right, let's see. So Banjo Sandwich saying, Landman is back. Yay, yes. I finally caught up on the first episode of season 2 of Landman, and it's really is such a great show. I have my issues with it, just, ethically, morally. I think all the sexual stuff is just not necessary. It adds nothing to, and this is for any show or any movie. But just, I really like how he is able to, right, Taylor Sheridan specifically, right, how he's able to take these ideas and these concepts and make them so interesting, right? He makes an entire series about oil tycoons, and he could go the route of making them just the most despicable people on the planet, making them the clear bad guy. And instead, he shows the gray of that world, right? He shows that whether it's the oil barons or whether it's the guys working the actual pumps, right, that they're all human and that they all have flaws. And I think that is why the storytelling is so powerful and why it's so effective too. So that's great. Obviously, we still got, we just got episode 9 of Tulsa King. Tulsa King has continued to be solid. I think Banjo Sandwich disagrees with me on that a little bit, if memory serves correctly. But that show has been awesome, continues to be awesome, and just really nice to see some consistently good storytelling. So being able to, when my homework this morning and over the weekend was to have to watch 2 episodes of one episode of each show, and the shows in order was to watch, Landman, and then actually I forget which one I watched first, but Landman and then Tulsa King. I was like, wow, this is the best homework ever. If only the quality of the homework that Gary usually gives us was at that level, man, that would make my week so much more happy and entertaining. But instead, it's some of the worst stuff that you could ever imagine. Keely Chow, what is going on? Everyone is doing great, and I had my typical cheese pizza on Friday. The mother-in-law was in this past weekend, so that was also good. We're getting a room ready for baby girl, for baby Sif, because she's getting her big girl room, which means my wife's office is switching, so it was a whole thing. They were able to get a lot done, though. Thanatos Felicitas, what is going on? Saying hello at 725. Welcome. We got Bruce hanging out in the chat. Hail to you, Bruce. We got Shorty Short, Laura, the Mother Major General. What's going on, Shorty Short? Welcome back. Always great to have you here. Sorry for the technical issues at the very beginning that caused us to have a delayed start. Jimmy A., who is a member here on the channel. Hail, Odin Chat. Hail to you. Thanks for being a member. We got Gandalf, 1477. Thank you very much. Kimberly G. Keeling Shadow Cat. What's going on, Kimberly G? Thank you very much. Hope you had a wonderful Monday. Short saying, I'm home eating salt and vinegar chips, so I won't be texting a lot so I can clean my until I clean my hands. No, Laura, I demand that you use your phone and your computer with your salt and vinegar chip hands. I demand it. I want you to get all of that all over your computer and all and all over your phone too. You must make a giant mess. The Morak 229. What's going on, Morak? Welcome back. 731 in the chat. Thanks for being a member here on the channel. Again, Rumsky hanging out over on the Green Machine. I know, very unusual to be late, but I had a good reason. Luke Zilla says hello to you. Forever Sci-Fi, who is a member here on the channel. Hail to you. Guillermo Gage tagging to say, there are great magicians in the movie. Is there a great magician in the movie Now You See Me 3 where he changes the clothes from red to black and red again? Maybe that's why it's doing well in China. You didn't have to send another one. Or you didn't have to send that again. As I said, I luckily had it pulled up, so I was able to pull it up. Short, Odin weather here today. Ooh, it's rainy and cold? Or are you talking more of like thunder and lightning? Because if you mean like Odin, like the mythical Odin, then that would make sense. But, me, Odin, I love cold. I as much as I hate Twilight, the weather of Twilight is my kind of weather. That just means like the weather of Seattle, the weather of the United Kingdom, right? Where it just like never has sun. That's my kind of weather. Gary saying Odin boomer. Nope, no boomering here. Short. Putting the muscles up there. Jeremy Sikowski, what's going on? Evening, Odin. Everyone else on here. Evening to you. I think I'm finally now caught up in the chat to be able to switch over here. Yes, I am. Kiki Rumsky saying, oh, good work. Thank you. Forever Sci-Fi, who's a member, saying, when Gary leaves the country, someone has to pick up the boomer slack. I don't think anyone could ever pick up all of the slack that he leaves behind. Kiki Rumsky, Badlands fell off like a woman backpack. Ooh, dang. Obviously, that's a Badlands reference. Guess it would be more of a synth backpack than anything else. Guillermo Gage, thank you for another dollar donation. Saying, add OMB Reviews at Odin. The username that shows up on Rumble is OMB Reviews. I don't know if it's interchangeable. Here's another dollar I was trying to send. I don't know if you have the Super Chats. No, again, the Super Chats, the Rumble Rants, they show up in my chat, so you don't have to tag at all to do the Rumble Rants. If you are commenting outside of Rumble Rants, though, again, whether it's at OMB Reviews or just Odin, that's fine. Whatever is easier for you in that regard. Luke Zilla, thank you very much for being here on YouTube. He had to say, Predator Badlands losing IMAX, Dolby, and other PLF screens probably had an impact as well, considering they plastered the seat and IMAX on every trailer and TV spot. I think that's being... Here's the thing, all right? It's obvious that when you lose out on your premium format screens, right, when you lose out on your PLF screens, that it does have a cost. But I think that's very much trying to... I'm not saying this is what you're doing, Luke Zilla, but I could totally see this being one of the shill media covers that, again, try to argue last weekend that the numbers were so good. That's a way of them trying to play cover, all right? Because this is something that I've seen a lot, right? When movies lose those PLFs, yeah, you typically see a drop, but you don't always see a 68% drop in week 2. Because there's some films that are still... Because here's the thing, okay? Yes, you're losing that higher value ticket. But if people still want to go see your film, they will still go to see it whether it's in IMAX or not. So when you drop 68%, that means not only are you losing those PLFs, it means that you're also not retaining any people to see the film in the available formats, which means you're just losing people altogether, all right? A 68% drop is not just something that can be excused by losing PLFs, right? We've seen other films go from having them to losing them, not drop off that highly, all right? So I definitely, and again, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, Luke Zilla, but I definitely think that excuse doesn't quite work when you're dropping that much. Banjo Sandwich saying, an intriguing flop. Yes. Gary liked it. I did not. Hardwick, what did you think of Ruby Rose criticism of Sydney Sweeney? Honestly, as soon as I saw Ruby Rose, I immediately didn't care. So I have not seen it, and I don't really care to find out what it is either. So let's just leave it at that. Just going to be honest. Taka.Razar. I got to always be very careful reading names. But Taka, welcome back. Or rather, welcome. I don't know if I've seen that name in here before. Welcome. Jimmy A. The question is, will Avatar make $2 billion? Given the drop-off from the last movie, there is a possibility it does not. Yes, I would definitely agree. I definitely think that as the years go on, people are finally, with every film, starting to wake up. But I will say, right, as a teacher with the younger kids, like they, even like in the teenage demographic, they actually still have very positive thoughts about Avatar. Because whenever I've brought it up, it's always interesting to hear like why do you hate it? Why do you hate it? But it's so beautiful. So they're obviously still drawn by the visuals of it, right? And I can see why there's still obviously a lot of people that are drawn by it. But more and more people are starting to say, yeah, those visuals are really nice, but the visuals are going to be what they are. I need some story to keep me going. And the more people start to actually think about any of these movies, they start to realize just how bad the storytelling really is. How in the first film, it's just completely ripping off so many other better films. And in the second one, who in the heck even knows what's going on? Because the story was clearly playing second fiddle to any and all of those visual effects. Awful. So that is the big question, right? Will it hit $2 billion? And I think you're right. If you're looking at the trends, if you're looking at how the tracking of those films has gone on throughout time, there was a pretty massive drop in total box office between the first and second film. And it's kind of amazing, to be frank. Now, of course, I don't know why they really need to update the servers at the numbers, because it is just abysmally slow, especially like for a live stream when you're trying to get data as quickly as possible. It is just very, very frustrating. And it makes me have to go and use Box Office Mojo, which is owned by Amazon. And when Amazon IMDb Pro, when they took over Box Office Mojo and rebranded it, they destroyed it. I remember the old school Box Office Mojo. That was so awesome. Alas, it died a death a long time ago. But anyway, so the first film, because I kind of needed a bit of a refresher. So let me go ahead and actually pull this up so that way people can also see it. Right, so the question is about, Avatar, will it make $2 billion or will it, make less? So the first film in 2009, crazy that the first film came out in 2009. I was still in high school. Actually, sorry, scratch that. No, I was in college at the time. Lord, I'm getting my graduation dates all mixed up. I was 2 years out of high school, still in college at the time. And so back in 2009, it made $2.9 billion. So in today's dollars, that's well over $3 billion. I think it's actually like between $3.5 and $4 billion. I forget exactly which one, but it's a lot of money. Even without inflation, though, $2.9 billion is insane. Okay? But then you jump ahead, right, to 2022. A lot of time has gone by, and you go from $2.9 billion to 2.3. Now, the film still did, I think, a lot better than had been probably anticipated. What is especially interesting is that if you look at raw totals, it actually did worse domestically. And actually, sorry, I don't know why I said that so dramatically. It did worse both domestically and internationally, okay? And by quite a bit, too, right? Because remember, $785 million in 2009 would be pretty close to $1 billion of value in today's dollars, right? So taking that into account, Avatar Way of Water was only a few years ago, so let's round that up to maybe $700 million. We could say realistically there was about a $300 million drop between the first movie and the second film just domestically, okay? If we see a similar level drop, percentage-wise, or just anything close to it, right? What if the next film only gets to $500 million domestic? That's still a lot of money. It's still going to be one of the highest domestic films of the year. And then let's say the international drops also another few hundred million. Then yeah, all that it takes is about $343 million, as it says there, to drop beneath $2 billion. Now, again, we're kind of getting caught up here because the whole point of it is that it's guaranteed to make $1 billion, okay? Guaranteed. No doubts in my mind. You would need to have a worldwide catastrophe for this film to not be able to make it to $1 billion. But there is still no doubt that there was a pretty large drop-off between these two, right? As I said, we're talking, adjusted for inflation, roughly $4 billion, $3.5 to $4 billion for the first Avatar versus the 2.3. Let's round that up to maybe 2.5. So we're talking about $1 billion more of loss, and that's audience specifically. So we're talking about millions upon millions of people that saw the first film that did not see the second film in theaters. The audience did not grow for the second movie. And as the years have gone by, it certainly seems like more and more people are starting to get tired of it and starting to say, you know what, I really don't want another film. I would say they're finally wising up, but hey, what can I say? But anyway, yeah, I think that there's a chance that it drops below $2 billion. But again, it'll still be the highest grossing film of the year if it even gets barely $2 billion or even a little less than $2 billion. It's kind of crazy. Tina Guzman at 739, welcome. Thanks for being a member here on the channel. Mikey Dreamer here as well, saying, hey, Odin, I know you're a fan of Alita. Read article today in Empire of Interview with Cameron. He said he and Rodriguez have a blood oath to do at least one more, and they're making progress on it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know that Rodriguez especially very passionate about the project. The unfortunate thing is because Cameron is now in the bed with Disney, it means that ultimately it would be a Disney production, right? Because the original film was a 20th Century Fox production. So that means that anything that happens in the future is going to be under the Disney umbrella. And I'm sorry, I do not trust Disney in any way, whether it's Disney, 20th Century Studios, any of the other subsidiaries of Disney. I do not trust them to make Alita Battle Angel the way that the first film did, where it didn't have an agenda. It didn't push and shove things down your throat. It just was a fun, entertaining story. I have a great fear that if they were to try to make the sequel now, it would just be filled with identity politics. And it would destroy the legacy of even the first movie. So whereas initially I was very on board with supportive and wanting a sequel, I will say as of right now, I do not want a sequel. And it's specifically because Disney will be involved. If there's any way for them to have another company come in and to distribute the movie, to change up production, if Disney's not involved, then I would have hope, then I'd be excited. But if Disney's involved, I am sorry. I'm not interested. I'm going to be perfectly honest. All right, Wendy Hunter saying here, I'm a fan of Predator movies, but I honestly had no interest in seeing Predator Badlands, and you didn't miss much of anything. Banjo Sandwich saying, they are making 2 more Alita films. I think that was the plan. Jess Pena, ahoy! Ahoy to you. Banjo Sandwich, where is my shill of the year nom? Well, hey, if they nominate you, there's always that chance. Kate Rumsky saying, good work, thank you. Over Sci-Fi, when Gary, wait a minute. I've read this before. Why am I getting dupes? Why am I getting dupes? What happened? Why am I getting duplicates? This is crazy. Okay, there was the comment. Jimmy A's comment. Mikey Dreamers. What is going on? This is insane. I sure hope it didn't skip any chats. Gary saying, Odin broke the internet. No, I didn't. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry the cookies are off. I was too busy dealing with all that nonsense I forgot to turn the cookies on. Apologies. Heimdall, wake up. Wake up. Wake up, Heimdall, please. He's waking up, guys. Don't y'all worry. All right, let me get to some while we wait for Heimdall to load up. Guillermo Gage, thank you for the $2 Rumble Rant saying, changing the clothes from red to black and red again was Kung Pao enter the fist reference. I was so confused. I was like, yeah, I guess that would be. We are both ventriloquists. I don't know every line for that film. I will be perfectly frank. I'm much more about the ones that are seen more often. That was more of a deep cut for me, at least. Because for me, it's more of the tiger, 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 Birdie. I am a magician. Now I'm starting to remember. Now your clothes are red. Kung Pao into the fist. Oh, man. Sir Lancelotto, bro, where you been? Thanks for being here. Been too long. Hardwick, how does Predator Badlands compare to Predators in 2010? I'll have to look at it. Shorty Short saying, speaking of Twilight, the millennial daughter asked me to rewatch it unironically. She kept pushing to explain how the book was different. No. Yeah, my wife wanted to watch it to laugh at it because we really like this. He's an Australian comedian. I don't know why I said it that way. He's an Australian comedian who his claim to fame is he just does a lot of reinterpretations of the Twilight scenes, and it's hilarious because he's saying it with that very deep Australian accent, and he has his own version of the how, like that whole song, and his stuff is funny. And so my wife said, I bet now watching the movie, it would be funny too. And I can say for her, it was. For me, other than like a couple of moments, I was just like, oh my gosh, I forgot how terrible this is. I couldn't even laugh at it. It's just that bad. Jimmy A. Meg 2 is better than Meg 1 because no Ruby Rose in 2. Ooh. Shots fired. Thanos saying Avatar dances with Smurfs too. Jeremy Sikowski. What's your thoughts on the first look on the upcoming Legend of Zelda movie? I've seen some of those pictures making the rounds. Looks promising. The costumes look pretty good. Comics Division's doppelganger. What's going on? Said, I bet Shad is ticked because Badlands is bombing. Yeah, I wasn't able to be on the show when they talked about Badlands. I had to leave early that week. So wait, did he actually like it? Come on, dude. Remember Sci-Fi. They're also entertained by the 6-7 things. I don't expect them to see that Avatar movies are nothing great. That is very true. It is annoying how obsessed they are with it. I have to, like, in the classroom, I have to be even that much more attuned to what I'm about to say, even by counting or mentioning certain class names because they're known by, like, you know, period 1, period 2. I have to be careful with that because there's some of them that are so obsessed with it that, like, either in the background they're going or they're doing something else like it. It's the most dumb. Wendy Hunter. I was watching a TV show made in 2023 and the wokeness is very apparent. Makes me sad. Keely Chow leaving early again. I don't know why he does that. Xvoot, thank you for your patience for the $5 super chat. Appreciate you, man. Always dropping those super chats. Most consistent super chatter here on the YouTube side of things, saying, never was a fan of Avatar. Was always puzzling to me how successful it was. Haven't paid attention. Does Wicked 2 have a shot at $1 billion? So I'm glad that you asked that, Xvoot, because that does help to transition us over to that story. But before we talk about it, we're about to go into a lot more math here, guys. And you all know when we're talking about some math, when we're talking about any type of numbers, you know what time it is.
Time to see a real math magician at work.
That's right, everybody. It's time for some math and to see a real math magician at work. So I don't know why I'm on the Now You See Me. We'll get to that. But the question was about Wicked for Good. So here's the thing. Okay, Wicked for Good comes out this weekend. Kind of crazy that it's already here and that it's opening up a week before Thanksgiving. And also that based on the current tracking, Wicked for Good is expected to have a significantly higher opening weekend than Zootopia 2. Again, crazy that a kid's film in Zootopia 2, which personally I'm actually quite excited for because I like the first one quite a bit, is expected right now, projected by Box Office Theories tracking at the very least, to have a significantly higher starting point and is projected to end its domestic run at a much higher point as well. So as of right now, according to Box Office Theory, we'll see his official projections over the course of the next couple of days, and we'll see some other sites also start to put their own numbers out there too. And it's almost kind of sad because this is going up against two other much smaller films in Rental Family and Sisu, Road to Revenge, which are not going to really do much of anything at the box office this weekend. As you can see, single digits projected for both of those movies, because obviously the atmosphere is being eaten up by this follow-up to the first Wicked film. For those that don't know or have some basic knowledge of the show, the first Wicked was the first act of the musical. Wicked for Good is the second act of the musical. Now, apparently also, the early indications are that it's not just going to be the musical, but that the director, writers, people involved, the creatives, wanted to integrate a little bit more of the original elements that are a part of the original Wizard of Oz. Struggling to get there for a little bit. Trying to integrate some more of the Wizard of Oz storyline into the movie too, right? Into that story, because in the musical, it's basically just like a throwaway, oh, they're here, but they're not ever really seen. So apparently they, in this one, wanted to try to integrate that a bit more. So to actually have those characters be in the show a bit more, what have you. So it'd be interesting to see exactly how they do that. I'm trying to be very close because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that has not seen the musical or has not, known anything about the show itself. Because again, I know the show has been out for a long time. The musical's been out for, since 2003, I think is when it debuted on Broadway. So the story is, easily out there. And by the way, yes, it's based off of a book, but the musical and the book aren't just, no, I'm sorry. There's almost no connection between them. They're so very different from each other. Musical being significantly better than the book in almost every single way. Actually, no, in every way, I will say, right off the bat. Anyway, right now the projections are that Wicked for Good is going to open in its 3-day opening, right? Because there's no holiday frame going on for this movie. 155 million on the low end, 155 million domestic. This is just domestic numbers, guys. To 185 million on the high end, meaning an average of around $176 million. So yeah, we're talking about a film that's going to blow away the number one films from the last 5-6 weeks, probably all combined together. If you were to add up the number one films from the last 5 weeks, maybe even more, I don't think they would have added up to what likely will be made by Wicked for Good domestically in its opening weekend. He goes on to say that he thinks low-end domestic will be 448, high-end domestic of 536. A lot of this is rooted in how the first film performed, and that would also mean domestically he thinks about 513. Now, normally you would see that number and say, wait a minute, if it's getting it at $500 million potentially, right? If $500 million is on the table, let's go ahead and, again, get Avatar out of here. Patui, I spit at you, Avatar, all right? Because unfortunately, Box Office Mojo is actually working quickly, unlike the numbers. The first film, all right, these are all unadjusted, of course. The first film made about $474 million here domestically. So that is the metric by which someone like a Sean Robbins at Box Office Theory is running with, all right? He's saying, okay, what did the first film do? The first film saw an opening weekend of 112. So that's why in some of the early tracking, you'll probably see some of the so-called experts putting numbers of about 115 to 120, 125 out there, because they're looking at what the original film did and saying, okay, we think this film has picked up some steam, has been watched not just a lot in the theater, but also on demand and on Blu-ray and physical media sales. And so ultimately, they think that the audience has been picked up, right? They think the audience has probably been building up over the last year or so, right? Because, again, it's about a year between these releases, right? So that's what they're thinking, right? So they're thinking it's going to get about the same opening, probably a bit more, because the audience obviously did build up over time. And eventually, it's one of the biggest domestic films of 2024, right? $474 million domestically. The key, though, and why I don't think the film will hit $1 billion is because of those internationals. So even though Wicked as an IP does have an international connection, basically Wicked has not just been on Broadway, it has been in the United Kingdom, right, on the West End. It's been in whatever the key theater in Japan is. It's been in some key theaters in the Spanish markets. It's been in pretty much any major country that has any type of theater presence, there's been a version of Wicked out there. There's all these compilations that exist of some of the songs, some of the riffs, and all the different actresses who played Elphaba, who played Glinda, and which one did it better. And it's always amazing to see just how many different languages the show has been translated into. And I think I made this point in a previous show where I said, the difference there is that the whole show is in that native language. The whole show, when it is transferred over to those countries, is also casted, or rather the cast of those shows are people who are natural born speakers of the languages that they are singing and speaking in. And so it makes a lot more sense then for that connection to be there. Whereas with movies, you don't get that. With movies, you have whatever the actors are, and then you always have someone dubbing the voice. Very rarely would you ever have, I think there's been I'm sure there are at least a couple of films, but I think there was at least maybe one major film even where they actually shot a scene two different ways in different languages, just so that way they would have those cuts available for those markets, and that way it would be that much more natural. I forget exactly which one, but I feel like that it has happened before. Very expensive to do because now you're basically filming the film twice, right? And that's something that can build up cost quite a bit. Regardless of any of that, because that's not what's going on though here, right? You instead have these English-speaking actors that are having other, voice actors come in to sing and speak the parts in whatever languages it's being translated into for those dub versions out there. It's not nearly as compelling. It's not nearly as drawing you in, right? And obviously they're going to have the subtitle versions too, where they're going to, hear the voices of Ariana Grande and hear the voices of Cynthia Erivo, and they're very talented. They're very talented singers. But even from the first film, you can tell, right? You get almost $500 million domestic, and then about $280 international. So that's a pretty wide divide there, right? So over 60% of the audience coming from the domestic, and then less than 40% coming from the international. So if we have a very similar run here, okay, going now back to Box Office Theory, if it does get to 500 million, and he says, right, low end 448. So in a worst case scenario, it would do worse than the first film. And that could happen, right? Massive opening weekend, massive drop off. You could have that down the line, right? If it doesn't leg out, if it doesn't give the audience what it wants. So far, the marketing, I think, has been quite effective, though. And I think the marketing is going to bring in the audience that this is made for. This is not made for everyone, clearly, right? But this is clearly also not just being made for musical theater geeks either, because we've seen those films come out and they've never been this big. Whether it be Cats, the nightmare fuel that is Cats. Obviously, that had a lot more other issues going on with it, so that's not really too fair. But you even look to a Chicago, or you look to Hairspray, you look to any of the musicals that y'all can think of, right, that have come out over the years. Some of them have found success, but it's almost always been larger domestic, very little, if any, international presence. That I do think is what's going to happen here. You're going to see, I think, probably much higher domestic. I do think 500 million minimum makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, could it be less than that? It could. There's a sense that you're getting in the pre-sales, in just kind of the lead up to this movie, how big the last one was. And even though all of the press tour has been cringe and has been creepy, that still also gives more social media clicks, more interest. And the fact is that the Gen Z, growing up Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever audience and whatever young audience and generation they are at this point, the ones that are kind of following along on TikTok and other, short time span media, I think are going to be much more impacted to go see something like this because of the craziness of those interviews than others would. So you have the musical theater audience going out to it. You've got the Ariana Grande fans going out to this. You've got the just kids going out because this is like the thing that's going to be all over social media too. Featuring Ariana Grande, I think, is also an important thing because she's always been good at social media. I remember I saw her on Broadway when she was, in her teens, and she was on YouTube and she was singing, some of these amazing renditions of some very popular songs, massive social media following. And the show she was in, she wasn't even the lead. She was a supporting character, and yet clearly she had one of the best voices on stage and had a massive social media following because she knew what her audience wanted. You add all of those things together, and so that's why domestically, 500 million minimum, I think is going to happen. High end being 536, again, it's not outside the realm of possibility. So if we say about 500, maybe let's say 515 is able to do domestically. Internationally, maybe we see a bump because it's been out there a bit more, but I could see it going 250 to 300. We could see less come in international because that's kind of the market right now. International is not really, really high on a lot of the American properties coming out right now. So we could see 250 to 300 million, but you still do that math and it's like, yeah, maybe 800 to 900 million dollars worldwide that this film could do. And it would make sense. You're seeing it match the first film, build upon it, but not enough to make $1 billion. International, I think, is going to be what either makes or breaks. If we see a massive international showing for this new movie, right, this weekend, that could be an early indication that $1 billion is on the table. But the reason why I don't think it is, as of right now, I don't think the internationals are going to show up to the same level as the domestic. And just like the first film, it kept it from being higher than what it actually is, because that domestic was very good, especially for films coming out these days. To have an even higher domestic, as is being projected for this new film, those internationals, I don't think are going to come to the rescue of it this time either. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Wicked for Good. Right now, tracking very well. I can totally see Sean Robbins' numbers being correct there. As I said, traditional tracking probably will be around 120, 125 maybe. Don't be surprised if those numbers start to bump up a little bit as you get closer to the release, as more pre-sales go out there, right? As the hype is built up to it. I think it's going to be pretty massive. All right, let's see. Wendy Hunter had to say, they re-released the first Avatar in 3D as well. I know. Drives me crazy. Geek364, Avatar 3 will not do as well as the first two. Yeah, it's every time making less and less and less, as it should. Hardwick, in a nutshell, Ruby... I love how it's like I say, I don't care. And I'll leave it at that. Hardwick still has to come back and be like, I'm going to tell you all about it anyway. All right. So here's the tea. Here's Hardwick spilling the tea on the whole Ruby Rose situation. In a nutshell, Ruby Rose is upset that Christy Martin is being played by a straight woman in general, and especially Sweeney, who she thinks hates gay people. Well, of course she is. And Ruby Rose has been irrelevant for years now. So this is also Ruby Rose's attempt to try to, become relevant again. And guess what? It still didn't work. Serge Lancellato saying, OMB Reviews, my family could use a prayer. Dad has ataxia. Sister is nuts. Mom has lung cancer. Could use prayer. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We'll keep you in my prayers. Sorry that you've been dealing with that, man. And this chat's amazing. A lot of prayers heading to you from some Norwegian guy, Wendy Hunter, Gandalf. That, of course, is Kimberly G. We have an amazing chat here. A lot of prayers coming at you, man. Short saying, that would be a funny prank. Have everyone send dupe chats. Oh, man. That would be the worst prank in the world because I would be going insane. That wouldn't be very nice. Some Norwegian guy. Any predictions for Luc Besson's Dracula? It'll come out in February. Not exactly the best month for horror-esque movies or movies in general. Yeah, that to me tells me a lot. So whenever a studio puts a film out in February, or more so January, right? But January or February, that typically is a sign that they do not think the film has a lot of potential. Because if they thought a film had a potential to make bank, they would put it out at a primetime spot. So they would be waiting for end of May, anytime during the summer, June, July. They'd be putting it, maybe first weekend of August. Or they'd be holding off for like the Thanksgiving, like anytime between like November, December, because that's when things start to pick back up again at the theaters. Those would be the times that you would typically think to see. But when you put it in January and February especially, I always like to say the joke, right? January is the month where films go to die. February is where the death, basically continues. And we've seen, right, exceptions to this. We've seen films. The first Megan, for instance, was able to move past that. Right, it was a horror thriller coming out in January that ended up making quite a bit of money compared to its budget. And so successful was it that they made a sequel, and then they released a sequel at a time that really wasn't benefiting it, and the film also didn't give really fans what they wanted, and so the film flopped. So yeah, obviously we can kind of see how things happen there. But as far as early thoughts, it's still a ways out, and I don't do long-term projections. It's just not really my game. I can't imagine it'll do well, though. The chances of films doing well in January or February, for that matter, usually aren't very high. So, yeah. Can't say I think much will happen. All right, let's see. Morak. I watched Alita based on your recommendation and enjoyed it. Yeah, dude. Nice. Absolutely. I still have a beautiful Alita Steelbook. Steelbook was one of the best Steelbooks to be released. And I really still hold to the first film being so good, being so entertaining. I don't want a sequel, though. I'm going to be honest, because Disney will be involved, and I don't want that. Shorty Short saying, you better hold on tight, Spider Monkey. Gosh. And again, it's only funny because of the rendition brought out by the comedian. Wendy Hunter saying, math. I love it. Yes. Shorty Short saying, I'm still here, guapo. I always appreciate that, Laura. Gunner, what is going on? Dropping $20 over on the Streamlabs side. That is Willow right there in a blanket. Always great to see those gifts pop up. But Gunner, thank you for the $20 donation via Streamlabs, because YouTube ain't getting none of that. Saying here, nice to hear from James Cameron that he and Robert Rodriguez are making some progress on getting Alita 2 produced. Yeah, and again, Gunner, thank you for that donation. And I know a lot of fans of Alita, right? The Alita army was massive, right? And I know a lot of people are probably very excited for the prospects, right? That finally something they've been wanting for a long time is going to come to fruition. But I'll say this now. Be careful what you wish for. Okay? Because if it's James Cameron, Robert Rodriguez producing, and someone else distributing, it could be good. But if Disney is involved in any way, I'm gonna say right now, I probably will hold off seeing the film until someone says, hey guys, this actually is a good film that somehow got released by Disney. Because that's just how toxic Disney as a brand has become. They've become so untrustworthy that even something that I, for a long time, was like, please give us this sequel. And I remember like the moment where 20th Century Fox was bought by Disney, that was the first thought that like popped into the mind, was like, oh man, you know what? I don't think this is going to play out well anymore. All right, let's see. Caveat Ties, welcome. Mikey Dreamer, remember the Zootopia 2 opens on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. So Box Office Theory is probably only taking into account the 3-day weekend. It's a very good point. That is a very good point. I do think, though, that his overall projections, right, that would explain at the very least the opening weekend, but even his total domestic is, for Zootopia 2 specifically, he thinks that Zootopia is only going to make total domestic between $350 and $439. So even still, Wicked for Good is expected to make about $100+ million more domestically than Zootopia 2. So that's still a massive difference between those two things. The difference, though, is that Zootopia 2, even with that lower number, has a better chance at hitting $1 billion. And the reason why is because whereas Wicked for Good has an international problem because it's a musical with American English singers, it just doesn't cross over as well. The first film kind of showed that. Zootopia 2, as an animated movie, it's a lot easier for foreign languages to be adapted into those animations, right? Because it doesn't matter as much about mouth movements, because when it comes to animated characters, it's not nearly as clear cut. So it's easier, right, to have different languages being dubbed in and things like that, and it works a lot better, right? Amongst other things too, right? It's a kids movie, it's for families, and so that's also more palatable. Zootopia 2 is going to have a much larger international than Wicked for Good. I will say that for sure. The question is how good, okay? Because if Zootopia 2 gets only $350, it's going to have to make well over $700 million international alone just to hit that $1 billion mark, if that's even a possibility, okay? Just for some context. And again, this is why I like the speed of Box Office Mojo. Unfortunately, everything else about it sucks. 2016 Zootopia, the first film, made $1 billion. And again, I think this is an interesting dynamic. We'll go ahead and put this up on the screen as well. So this is the first Zootopia film. These are unadjusted numbers from 2016, okay? $341 million domestic, $684 million international. So this one actually had over 65% of its entire box office made from international audiences. Now, here's a big question, of course. What about the original release? The original release was $1 billion, okay? Because some people bring that up sometimes. And let's see this. It made $236 million in China alone. That is a key factor because movies today in China, Western movies in China today, are not making the same kind of money they were back in 2016. There's been a massive shift away from Western films, amongst other things. China's also been playing around with their box office a bit, right? We saw this with the whole Ninja 2, right? Where they're like, oh, it actually made like, $5,000 billion. It's like, oh, yeah, sure it did. Sure it did, China. But gone are the days when films, Western films, were making this much money in China. Remember that this is a big reason as to why companies like Disney invested so much into trying to get more of their films released in those markets, so much that they were willing to try to play footsie with the censors over in China, right? Trying to, to placate to them, to release, alternate posters that removed questionable characters or questionable personalities or questionable skin tones even. Disney was caught, of course, doing this just to placate to them. And it turns out, guess what? They got played. Whether intentionally or not, who knows? But yeah, it's not going to make $236 million, Zootopia 2. So basically what needs to happen, and this is what I do think is going to happen, right, is that to hit $1 billion, it needs to have a significantly better domestic. I think it has a chance to do that, right? Box Office Theory has it, 350 to 439. So he also thinks that it's going to do better than this first time around. Again, unadjusted for inflation. So 350 today would be actually less than what it would have made back in 2016 if you were to take those numbers into account. But I could see the film doing $400 million domestic. The question then is, does it make 600 international? International audiences have not been as hot on American films or on Western properties, but the one factor that I do think needs to be, the one thing I think, the one metric that I look to that makes me think and have more confidence in Zootopia 2 getting $1 billion versus a Wicked is what we've seen happen in the animated space amongst certain IPs. Not all IPs. Disney has had a lot of flops from both sequels and also from original content too, right? Disney has been losing a lot of money on a lot of their properties. But the fact still remains that a little film called Inside Out 2 came out back last year and was able to make $1.6 billion, over $600 million domestic, over $1 billion international. This film, however, came out in June. This film came out in the summertime. So Zootopia 2 is not going to have that advantage. Now, it is going to have the advantage of the Thanksgiving box office, which could be really big for it here domestically, right? That could be a huge factor. But international, we saw the international weakening even last year. It came out for a film like Inside Out 2. So Zootopia, popular IP, just like Inside Out, it's a popular IP. Some would argue which one is more popular, but again, all it needs to do is make around $700 million international on a $300 million domestic run to hit $1 billion. And I think that is absolutely possible. It would not surprise me to see a Zootopia make $400 million or so domestic and then about $600 plus million international. That would be enough for it to hit $1 billion. That's why I do still think and have confidence that Zootopia 2 will probably hit $1 billion, has a very good chance of hitting $1 billion, but also why I don't think you're going to see the same thing happen for Wicked. All right, let me get to some of the soups real quick, and then we'll jump back into the general comments. So again, thank you for that $5 super chat, XVoot. Hopefully that I answered that question. All right, let's see. Because I think there's been a few others. All right, XVoot for another $5 super chat said, thank you for the great content. Does Five Nights at Freddy's 2 look to be profitable? It's a very good question. Let me see if I can pull that up. So let's see. Five Nights at Freddy. Interestingly, Box Office Theory, this is coming out December 5th. Not really a horror month, December known to be. I think that they may have left some money on the table with Five Nights at Freddy's coming out in December and not in October, of all things. But again, they've had success before. Remember, the first Five Nights at Freddy's film that they released, they had a day-and-date release onto a streaming service. And everyone and their mother was saying, oh, that's just a death knell. This film's not going to make anything. And I was like, au contraire. These fans seem to really want to go see this film in theaters. And sure enough, it blew up that whole narrative. So all the whole COVID stuff, remember when they were like, oh, well, Black Widow only did bad because it had day-and-date release on Disney+. That whole narrative got blown out of the water when Five Nights at Freddy's 2 came out. Because, no, it's actually a matter of budget, a matter of fan base, and a matter of just giving fans what they want. Fans of the franchise, very happy with the first film, which is why it did well enough, both on streaming and also in theaters, for them to have a second one. So Box Office Theory is projecting the film to have a $50 to $65 million opening domestically, with a total domestic of between 85 and 132. So that is, I think, a pretty good sign of things. The budget on the film is $51 million. So a $51 million budget. The first movie, for context, was only a $20 million budget. So they've upped the budget quite a bit for this. On a $50 million budget, they would need to make about $150 million globally to be able to break even. Because today's market, you need about 3 times your budget to break even. So Box Office Theory has the total domestic between 85 and 132. Okay. The first film globally made $291 million. And very importantly, when it comes to this specific question, let's see if I can get the Five Nights at Freddy's 2023, is what the domestic international splits were like. And we'll pull that up now. Again, thank you, XVoot, for that super chat. The first film had a split of about 50-50. 47% domestic, higher international. That's somewhat surprising. Domestic opening was $80 million. That was the huge surprise. People were like, wait a minute, it got day-and-date release and still had an $80 million opening weekend. That's also why anyone who tries to say Predator Badlands, now I have another film in front of me to be like, oh, wait a minute. Another reason why Predator Badlands opening weekend was not actually that good. Day-and-date release, this film did $80 million. You want to come at me again with why the original $40-ish million opening is that impressive? On a much higher budget, by the way, and everything else going on for it. Anyway, I digress. So 137 domestic, 154 international. You round up for inflation, probably closer to $300 million, all right, is what the first film made. Box Office Theory is saying that the film is not going to have the same opening. It's going to have a much smaller opening domestically. Will that happen, or will it overperform? This $80 million was an overperformance, because the opening weekend for this movie was definitely nothing close to $80 million. That is a fact. So will it actually do that, or will it end up only making 50 to 65 million? Hard to say. But again, $50 million budget is still a lot smaller than a lot of other modern budgets. Still means it only needs to make about $150 million. I think it's definitely possible. Because even if it makes half of the first movie, it's broken even. So seems like there's some excitement, too, amongst the fan base for that as well. All right, and then XVoot for another $5 super chat saying, your prediction, Wicked 2 or Zootopia 2, which one is more profitable? Profitability is not the same thing as making money. I think between the two films, based off of everything, Zootopia 2 has the best chance of making more total money. As far as actual profitability is concerned, It is a little hard to say. Let me see, because again, remember when it comes to Disney is never ever forthcoming when it comes to budgets or anything else financial. No current budgets are being projected for Zootopia 2. Okay? The first Zootopia for 2016, they told us it cost $150 million. These days, pretty much anything major from Disney has a minimum spend of $200 million. I think that could be a fair assessment of what they likely have spent on Zootopia 2, if not even more, because that's just what Disney does, right? So $200 million budget, whereas Wicked for Good, let's see. The first Wicked cost about $150 million. Wicked for Good projected to have also cost about $150 million as well. So much smaller budget, and Wicked is expected to make more. Sorry, scratch that, reverse it. Zootopia 2 is expected to make more money, but not by much. I think Zootopia 2 might be a barely billion-dollar film, and again, we'll have to wait for the numbers to come out to actually get an idea of where the film will likely end. But profitability, yeah, I would say Wicked has a better chance of being more profitable. But it's specifically because they spent a lot more money, likely spent a lot more money on Zootopia 2, and Disney has a massive spending problem, especially with marketing. Their marketing is always a lot higher than other films and other studios and how they spend. So, anyway, hopefully that answered your question. And then Gunner, hold on. Sorry. Man, people are all over the place tonight. Thank y'all again for y'all's wonderful and very generous donations and comments tonight. Gunner, though, 9 minutes ago, thank you for the $20 donation via Streamlabs. Again, YouTube ain't getting none of that, saying, does China still have the program where a few selected Western films get preferential terms where the studio get a higher cut from the box office than usual, or have they phased that out? Gunner, I don't ever remember that ever being the case. What China would do is China would give preferential treatment to certain studios to be let into their country, because China only lets a certain number of Western films into their country every year. That has been always the restriction, okay? So they only let a certain number of Western films into their country every year. That's already one. And then 2, of those Western films that do get let in, they only get 25% of the box office there. Okay. The only time that there were ever different terms was when a Chinese-owned company was when Legendary was owned in part by a Chinese company. I believe that partnership is over. This was the big debate over whether the American Godzilla MonsterVerse films were profitable or not, because on paper, they weren't really all that successful because of how much money they made in China, because your typical return on investment there is not as good, right? And that's where it made the most money. But we were told, and this was the issue, an executive at the company, at the Chinese company, said that their number was better than 25%, but that's all they said. They didn't say how much better. They didn't say an exact percentage. They just said it was better than 25%. And that was, again, specifically Legendary. And it was specifically the prime owner, the majority stakeholder of Legendary, which was a Chinese-owned company. And so that's why they got preferential treatment in that specific case. So that's why those Godzilla films made that money. Also, the other part of the profitability of that was Toho, I believe, as well, because Toho had money in the game there too. But as far as like just total net profit, that was a big part of it, was how much did they actually get back from the Chinese market. Every other film, though, again, Western films already very limited in how many are released in China. Of those films that get released in China, they only get 25% back. So, yeah, that's still what is going on there. All right, let me head back into the chat, and hopefully I have not clicked on any chats that I'm then going to be skipping. And if I do, if that happens to you, I do apologize. That was not my intention. All right. Geek Truth saying, you two skipped my comment earlier. I wanted your thoughts. I've come to the conclusion that Taylor Sheridan is great at creating and starting series, but not so great at ending them. I would disagree. because I think you had the one-off of, was it 1884? Was a phenomenal series. And it was made to start end to end. And it was great. 1923 had issues from the beginning because anti-Catholic stuff was there from the beginning. And I was a big fan of Yellowstone for most of the series. I mean, were there some things I wasn't as fond of? Sure. I think the loss of one of your biggest stars obviously impacted the storytelling, but I thought that he ended about as well as he could for what was left. So I don't think he is the same. Like J.J. Abrams is notorious for starting off things interesting and then never bringing it anywhere. I think Sheridan has proven just to be a consistently good writer. So I don't think his endings are necessarily bad. It's hard to say. I in general, though, would not agree. Maybe I'm missing something, though. Justin C. Evening all. Wonder when theaters can expect to bring in moviegoers after Zootopia 2 and Avatar 3 release. When that's going to hold them over for a while, okay? Avatar is going to be bringing in people through January. So through the slowest months, Avatar will be there. Luke Zilla. After Wicked 2, Zootopia 2, Avatar 3, theater is going to be struggling a lot until Super Mario 2 on April 3rd. Again, there's always some surprises that come along the way, but yeah, in general, they're going to have this huge influx of cash because then you also have the whole award season December releases, right? There's going to be several films that come out over the next couple months that are not those major tentpole films. They're going to bring in some more money. So they're going to be very busy over the next couple of months, right? Going to really get kicked off this weekend. Not to mention, a lot of these films are going to have, follow-up traffic too. But yeah, it's January, February are always rough. But we've seen some of the worst August, September, and October numbers in history. So it does not bode well for there to be great January or February numbers either, or March. Sahil, what's going on, man? Did you get a chance to watch Tom Cruise's speech at the Oscars? I wish everyone in the industry had that much passion and love for film. Hollywood would be booming instead of dying. Love, Tom. I did not. Was that like the honorary Oscar that he got? Jimmy A. I know it's different genres, but would Wicked for Good benefit from the fact that it doesn't have to compete with another movie on the same day the first did with Gladiator 2? No, because Gladiator 2 didn't do much of anything. It wasn't really any competition. Mikey Dreamer, today is the 30th anniversary of GoldenEye. Dang. I think it's probably more well-known for the N64 game than the film. That's a great point. I love the film. I think it was the best Pierce Brosnan film. And the game is so good. Man, GoldenEye N64 was my jam. None of the other games ever lived up to that one. Hardwick, apparently Ruby Rose feels a degree of ownership over Christie since she was involved with the project at one point but got replaced. Gotcha. Wouldn't surprise me if she's just jealous. And, the whole, she's the reason why it's flopping. No, the story is why it's flopping. It's an independent movie. And I don't even know what the actual, let me see if I can find that information out. Let's see, Christie. And then we'll start to wrap things up. So Christie, oh man, yeah. I would not have spent $15 million. $15 million is still very little. That's not a $15 million story. I had never even heard of this person before, okay? This is not a household name, Christy Martin. Just again, in general. You don't spend $15 million on that. Because no matter who you have in that lead role, it's not making money, guys. If anything, it's made more because of Sydney Sweeney being in the movie, and she's very popular. So, interesting. The director is actually one that I like some of his work. I've not seen Christie myself, but it's definitely one that I'm interested in. Let's see. Gandalf saying, still listening, but my phone is dying. Have a great night, everyone. Hey, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Hardwick, I've seen parts of Luc Besson's Dracula. It's not good. Also, the score was so bland that I couldn't tell it was by Danny Elfman. Dang. Wow. That's not good. That is not good. There's Gunnar. I think Disney has first refusal on distribution, but I hope they don't care enough about it to make studio notes. Yeah, I again, if that is the case, I'll be happy. But I just don't have high hopes. Forever Sci-Fi, what's more live action, Avatar or the new Moana remake? Lucky Dreamer. Moana 2, which also came out during Thanksgiving holiday last year, made $598 million international and $460 domestic, so that could be the same route for Zootopia 2. Yeah, and Moana 2 was definitely not as well received either. Though the hype, I think, was a lot higher for Moana 2. So it'll be very interesting to see. We'll have to wait years to know what it actually costs to produce. Yeah, which one, right? It's always insane. Disney especially is just never straightforward with any of their stuff. That's why the one benefit to them making any films in the United Kingdom is that we get those tax returns. We get those numbers. Caveat ties, Badlands, is that the box office? Oh, I mean, yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I guess just to officially, talk about it. Yeah, Predator Badlands is a flop, guys. I'll just quickly cover this in my chart because we love charts here on OMB Reviews. So as you can see, Predator Badlands had $136 million after 2 weeks, currently at $94 million in financial losses. The film at $136 million, it means film will make between $194 and $272. And it's all, again, because of the fact that it dropped off by so much money. Let's pull up the numbers, if the numbers loads. There we go. Look at that. Massive 68% drop. Everyone, Box Office Theory, Box Office Report, Box Office Pro, they are all like, oh, it's going to drop like 50 to 55%. Nope. Dropped 68%. 68%. Look at this. Historical averages, guys. Bottom of the charts of the numbers. But again, we were all told that, oh man, guys, this film's doing so good, you just have no idea. Just you wait. No, it's not. So happy to see it, though. Less so about the movie itself, because as I said, the movie, it's like, but man, oh man. There's not much I can say. I said it at the beginning already. The shilling was just so bad last weekend. It was just so frustrating. Hardwick, when I asked how Predator Badlands compares to Predator 2010, I was referring to quality, not box office. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Honestly, I don't even remember Predators. Wendy Hunter, is that way Meg 2 was heavy on China release? Or is that why Meg 2 was heavy on China release? Yeah, I think there was some involvement with a Chinese company. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense then. Hardwick, I think Cameron has such clout that Disney interference is likely a non-issue if he produces an elitist sequel. The issues with his Avatar movies are all Cameron problems, not Disney problems. Yeah, but the problems in there are also things that they would have likely done. He just put in so many other problems. Geetrue64 saying 1883 ended well because it was contained to one season. 1923 in Yellowstone ended poorly, in my opinion. I just think he doesn't have an ending in mind when creating. I guess that's my point. Yeah, but again, I can't speak to 1923 because I didn't like 1923 from like the beginning because of the anti-Catholic stuff. Yellowstone, as I said, we can argue over good seasons, bad seasons, etc. Overall, though, I thought that things made sense at least. Let's see. Hardwick, the real life Christy Martin likes the movie and has defended Sydney Sweeney. Well, there you go. That's all that really matters then. Some Norwegian guy, 007 Nightfire was an amazing game. Mikey Dreamer, Sheridan also has a music competition show he's producing called The Road, starring on CBS. Don't usually watch those, but enjoy that one. Interesting. Cavitize, my joke did not land. I guess it did. Hold on. Badlands, is that the box office? I get it now, Cavitize. Yes. That is what the box office is right now. It's just the Badlands. It's just the Badlands. Sorry. I'm tired, guys. My voice and my brain are tired. We had a test today. And normally test days are pretty pretty easy, right? You're just like, okay, I'm just keeping an eye, making sure no one's cheating. But every class had a technical issue, and I had to spend like 20 minutes, 2 classes in a row, trying to troubleshoot computers, which is so mentally exhausting. And then I had another, the last class of the day, I had another like couple issues that took time and mental energy. I almost didn't stream tonight because I was like, I'm just so mentally exhausted. Anyway, Gunner had another $10 donation via Streamlabs. Appreciate you. Says China did have a quota of Western films that were given preferential revenue share, and the studio got to keep 25% of the box office. I think Avengers Endgame got that. Other Western movies get a flat fee, not a box office cut. Again, Gunner, everything I've ever seen has always specified that when Western films get released in China, they get roughly 25% of the box office from their release. Again, don't know where you heard that other information from, but again, in general, 25% is the standard that is used. So, anyway. So a Norwegian guy, what movie has done best at the box office this year? Has there ever been a real hit this year at all? So Norwegian guy, why would you ask that when the show is wrapping up? Yeah, I think the best one that I can think off the top of my head would be Minecraft. Minecraft did pretty well. Caveat ties, it's hard to get jokes to land on chat. Sometimes it is. Timing is hard. especially when Odin is tired. Anyway, that's going to be it for me, everybody. So thank y'all very much for watching. Had a lot of fun as always. Ultimately, we left around. We talked about how Predator Badlands is indeed a sign of the Badlands that are the movie theaters. See, got you in there. Caveat ties. And we all talked about the early prospects for Wicked. And right now, Wicked 2 is looking to be as good and possibly even better box office-wise than the first film. And though I don't think $1 billion is on the table for it, it's definitely still possible. If it does happen, though, it'll be because of a higher than expected international or an even higher than anticipated domestic. But we'll have to, of course, wait and see. Anyway, Gunner says, I guess if China is cutting down on which movies get 25%, that explains why studios don't even bother releasing in China anymore. Yeah, and again, I think that's, a big part of it, but also they get 25%. And the reason why they're not releasing in China anymore, though, and why it makes sense is because even when they had big films, even when they had 100 million even in China, they only got 25 million of that. So in order for it to be worth anything, they had to make a lot. But even then, I remember my argument was always, they don't care about China because of how much money it is. Because again, they get so little of that back. It's basically a loss. It's a loss no matter how much they make there, essentially. The reason why they care, though, is because it boosts the overall total number. As I just mentioned, right, with the first Zootopia film, Zootopia 1 made $1 billion, but why? Because it made over 200+ million in China alone. So without China, that's only $800 million. And guess what? Not as good of a marketing tactic to say, oh, our film made $800 million, not as big as $1 billion. So the bigger thing they cared about was the total number. And a lot of them got so obsessed with $1 billion. They're like, we gotta make $1 billion, gotta make $1 billion, gotta get that B in there. They were willing to take terrible deals from China. And as I said, even when they had a success in China, because of how little they got back, it was never really worth it. Unless it was because they wanted that total to be there. And Zootopia is actually, the first one, is a perfect example of that because of how much money they made in China and how it made all the difference in the fact that that film made $1 billion. So anyway, Justin C., thank you, as always. Appreciate you being here. So Norwegian guy, it's okay. Wendy Hunter, thank you very much. Jimmy A., thank you. Carrot Dice, thank you. Forever Sci-Fi, thank you. Key Truth, I will not go to sleep. I will go get some. I don't have any. Actually, there might be a little ice cream left. Maybe some ice cream. At the very least, some chocolate. It always makes me feel better after stream. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. This was a ton of fun. As far as what's coming up this weekend, box office preview will go live sometime Friday morning. This will be a big one, guys, because Wicked for Good will have the official projections. Will it do better than the first film? I think that right now probably has a good chance to do better than the first film in almost every way. But only time will tell. We'll wait and see. And we'll cover that all here Friday morning. And then, of course, Sunday afternoon, around 3 p.m. is when the box office breakdown goes live. And it's always a good time. We'll finally have some numbers to talk about this weekend. That'll be great. Finally. Even if you have no care at all for Wicked 2, at least we can be all happy that theaters are making some money again. Anyway, you guys are all amazing people. Have a wonderful rest of your night. A blessed Monday. And as always, God bless. And now let me give a shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my Patreon members, Father Luca Illich, hail to you, Father, and also to Miss Mountain Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Mountain Muses. She is very lovely, great, awesome Catholic faith-based content over there. You'll also find over on Subscribestar my member Matt317. He is on Twitch with the same channel name, Matt317. Shout out to you, good sir. And also to a longtime member here, Mr. Roy, my Chosen of Valhalla member here on YouTube. Mr. Roy, thank you for always hanging out and for always being a part of this channel. It does mean a lot, as well as it does for all of my Chosen of Valhalla members. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream or video, or if you want it listed in that list that was playing just before, just now, check out the top link in the video description below. You'll find out how to get those types of shout outs at the end of every live stream and video. Not to mention, you get access to bonus video content and also access to a Discord server where there are a couple of channels on there where I do giveaways every single month. In fact, I do multiple giveaways every single month. I try to make it so that I'm giving away Blu-rays and 4Ks that make up at least 4 or 5 different giveaways. Sometimes I have to put them in all towards the very end because back in the school session, of course, now means that I'm going to be a little bit more delayed there. So if you want access to things like that, if you want access to a great community, you guys seriously are all amazing and beautiful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.